You're listening to the Play Pouch. Welcome back once again. I'm joined with Tequila. Still no sign of Alan, but he's getting there. So our third member is
Eventually.
imminently due. This episode, we're talking about Elden Ring and the sort of the complexities of the game, what we both think of it, and whether it was a good idea to have it as an open world game, etc., etc.
Mm.
Uh, so this is a title that came out last year in 2022, directed by Hidetaka Miyazaki.
Try saying that twice.
Yeah, and so this is his first open world title. Oh, and we had some additions from the fantasy writer George R. R. Martin as well.
Yeah, he was involved in the story and stuff, wasn't he?
Yeah, the creative of a game of Arse, which I can't stand. Yeah, Elden Ring is basically it's presented through a third person perspective. You can freely roam through the strange land. There's six main areas. You get a horse fairly quickly called Torrent. And he's the main mode of travel. The dungeons are linear. But the main land is sort of, you know, you can roam at will and go anywhere at will. There's lots of different types of weapons and magic spells. It's basically an open world version of your Dark Souls or Bloodborne type games. So,
Well, I think, Pete, before we analyse it, a little bit of history quickly about our Dark Souls experience. Okay, so I'd
yeah,
heard of the Dark Souls series for a long time. I'd watched a lot of videos on it. And I wasn't really intimidated by it per se. It's just one of those games that I'd heard in the background a lot.
yeah,
That it's this big, challenging, hard game. And it's one of those Marmite games, right? So either you really love it or you can't stand it and it drives people crazy.
yeah.
So I thought Elden Ring was a good starting point. So I actually have not played, but I know quite a lot of about Dark Souls in the series. But the first time I played them was Elden Ring. So how about you? Was Elden Ring your first, or did you try some of the older games?
No, I played Dark Souls 3.
Okay.
I completed Dark Souls 3, and
Oh right. Okay.
I haven't played any of the others. I've seen another YouTuber go through Bloodborne, and so yeah, I mean, like I've watched gameplay footage of Dark Souls 1 and 2, but really my only experience linear wise is Dark Souls 3.
And how did you generally? What was your? I mean, you must have liked it enough to finish it, but what was your impression of Dark Souls 3?
Um, I liked it. I liked the design of it all, the idea, the mechanics in terms of like you have, various sort of levels and you have to, reach the end of it and not die. Basically, if you do, all the enemies respawn. Some things you keep. Um, and yeah, you unlock shortcuts to sort of like
Mm.
get to the end quicker, but it's very unforgiving.
Yes.
The enemies
Yes.
are really, really hard. You have to have a perfect parry
Yeah.
to sort of really get anywhere. And yeah, I mean, like it is really brutal. It's almost sadistically brutal, and
Yeah.
that's really its charm. I think that's why a lot of people play it because they feel like they need to prove themselves. And as I was playing through it, I was getting more and more frustrated. And I was reminding myself of Monster Hunter World and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And yeah, the
Yeah.
bosses at the end of the level are so brutal. Like it's all just a matter of a pattern, remembering a pattern, and
They're puzzles to solve. That's really what
yeah,
it is.
yeah. So yeah, that's my experience previously is Dark Souls 3.
Um, well, I'd researched the game to a decent level before it came out because I knew I was going to get it. Um, and to start with, it is a little overwhelming to start with. Not because it's overbearing. It's just a little bit like, as you say, because everything like okay, so more or less after you've done the kind of tutorial part, one of the first enemies you come across, and I think you played it, didn't you, Pete?
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah, one of the first enemies you come across in the world is this. monster who is like a knight, right? And he's got this massive like hellbard,
Oh yeah, yeah,
and he's literally right at the start of the game. And you've got virtually, unless you're like some super player, right? He just never gets hit. Then you've got virtually no chance of beating him at all when you first encounter him. And I died on him quite a lot because I foolishly went back for more because I'm like, okay, well, I'm doing something wrong, right, or something like that. When the truth is, you're not meant to fight him then and there. You're
well,
not.
no, here's the thing: you can, and you can fight him, you can defeat him early on, but it's down to the your level of discipline, if you like. So
Yeah,
you
but
need,
if you're a new player like I was, right? If you're a completely new player, you haven't honed your skills yet at all.
yeah,
So, I mean, if you're an experienced Dark Souls player, then maybe fair enough. Maybe like okay, you would have retained your skills from some of the older titles. You know, you
sure,
understand how it works. But if you're brand new to the whole kind of Dark Souls genre, and it is kind of its own genre, then it's something which is a hard lesson to learn. I found it a hard lesson to learn. Did I learn it eventually? Yeah,
yeah,
I came back later, but it was a very kind of crash course in oh you know. And I like some of the memes are like "Welcome to Dark Souls, bitch." Well, it was like "Welcome to Elden Ring, bitch." We're
yeah,
going to throw this very hard enemy that is more or less going to one shot you, which he does, especially at the start of the game, and he's going to be fast and it's going to have very little weaknesses until you start getting the mechanics all down and pat. Because even when you go back and you've got better armor, maybe he doesn't one shot you, maybe he two shots you. So but that does still make a difference because it means you can survive a hit, you can survive a mistake, so to speak, right?
yeah.
So that was my first thing is I got quite frustrated because I was oh, it was like, oh no, he's here right now. He's here at the start of the game, right? So I meant to fight him. He's like a mini boss, which is what he is, but a mini boss that is most likely to be beatable. And if you're new to the game, my skill level was just not going to be there to be able to do it. So it was a little bit fruitless. And in the end I got the hint, I suppose.
Well,
And
he's technically a tutorial boss, and Souls games always do this. Like right at the start of the game, they'll give you a tutorial boss. I mean, and Elden Ring technically had one anyway before him with this weird,
yeah, I remember it.
But you can just sort of. The idea is that you're supposed to die.
Yeah, you're meant to die. That's the point of that boss, isn't it? But I know that some people do beat him. I've
Yeah.
seen it.
But yeah, again, that's doable as well. You can beat him, or you can just
Yeah,
jump off the cliff. But I think technically, when you get to the open world land and you see that guy on the horse, he is technically the tutorial boss. I think so. Yeah, I mean, like as you said, you're able to sort of kill him if you want. If you're experienced, if you're not experienced in Souls games, then yeah, there's a very slim chance.
yeah. I mean, to beat him at the start of the game, you've got to pretty much not take a hit. And
Yeah,
if you've got the skill levels to do that, then fair play. But if you're brand new to the genre, and you've got to hit him 20 or 30 times to kill him, and he's got to hit you once, there's no margin for error. So obviously, when you go back later on, you haven't got to hit him 20 or 30 times. You might have to hit him 5 or 6 times. So
yeah,
that's the difference. By that point, you've learnt the mechanics. You've learnt generally the dodge windows. You've learnt the iframes for the dodging and stuff like that. You're just more equipped. You understand the mechanics more. But to be thrown, at least for me anyway, to be thrown right into it at the deep end, like I say, baptism by fire, I suppose. So
yeah,
that was
yeah,
my first impression. Yeah,
yeah. I mean, I was. I wouldn't say I was impressed with my first impression. I looked at the open world and I just thought to myself, graphics wise, this is lame. The trees were absolutely terrible, and I wasn't impressed visually with it. But then I thought, well, okay, that's not the be all and end all of everything. Let's just carry on. And yeah, so the combat was, as brutal as I remember the
yeah.
Souls games being. Um, and so yeah, I mean, like for me, it was sort of like, okay, let's just crack on.
Did you play it on the PC, by the way? You
Uh,
or the console?
I think I played it on the PC. Yeah, yeah, I
Okay.
did. Yeah. And the story was just as ambiguous as ever, and that's what you have to expect with Miyazaki games. I didn't really understand what was going on. I liked the mood and the setting of the place, but I just felt like, I mean, I suppose we'll get to this, but I felt like he was just trying to be too clever. Um, and he has little to no experience of open world games, and I felt like that showed. Uh,
It is really interesting because I played it on the Xbox, so I thought the graphics were okay, but I was more impressed with how it ran because you know the whole 60 frames per second, 30, it's 60.
yeah,
So at least you could choose it to be 60. I'm trying to remember. I think you could choose performance mode. I
yeah,
think
you
that's how
could,
it was.
you could,
And so I played it on 60, so I knew the graphics weren't going to be great. But because, as we found out with games like Starfield and Redfall and other games, that actually 60 frames per second actually is not something that's actually as common as it should be.
yeah,
So having that there really did impress me. Because I thought it was, I quite liked the open world. I do agree with you about the story. It was it never really told you the story. If you wanted to go and read everything and really chase up the lore yourself and go and read everything that there was, I suppose you could kind of put it together. But I'll be honest, I played the game. I didn't quite finish it, um, but I played most of the game and I didn't really understand what was happening either. To be honest with you,
yeah,
so even after all that game, it was kind of like okay. But the thing is, did I care that much? I I don't think I did. I think I kind of accepted quite early on that oh, this is a little bit of kind of not baloney, but that kind of like okay, so I don't. The story's kind of a bit out there, but I'm having fun exploring the world, and I'm having fun in the open world because I quite liked it, and I was enjoying the combat, even though it was brutal. When it comes to the smaller enemies, I thought it was quite fair. Like if I made a mistake and then I was hit by them, or if I mistimed the parry, then that's on me, kind of thing.
yeah,
This is for the smaller enemies. The boss characters, that's a different. We can talk about that. But the smaller enemies, I thought generally it was quite fair. If you got overwhelmed, right? If you fought too many at once, you're kind of screwed. But that's kind of quite realistic. You know, it is. It is. You know, if you found yourself against three or four enemies, more often than not, you probably died because you'd be, you know, focusing on one and the other one would hit you in behind, or they'd shoot you with some spells or stuff like that. So I quite enjoyed the gameplay. For me was really good. I do look forward to the next one he does.
yeah. So that's the whole thing about these Souls games, is that the gameplay and the mechanics are always a million times better than the story.
Yeah.
And it tends to trick you. So, like, if you're walking down a corridor and you take a left, you see like a chest at the end of the corridor, and you're like, "Ha ha, ha, wicked!" and you run towards it, but then you just get ambushed by three people, and that kind of shit happens all the time. So.
Yep.
Um, yeah, so if you do get overwhelmed with enemies, it's best to just sort of run away because you will die,
Yep.
unless you're exceptionally powerful, which you probably won't be. But the bosses, I loved the bosses. I mean, I have to say, as the game went on, the bosses just got more and more brutal and more spectacular as well. And there's these area bosses, if you like, that are trapped in
Yeah. Yeah.
these jail type things, and they were nice and challenging. Um, yeah, so I mean, I loved the world building. The story, as I said, was just way too sort of like, what the fuck is going on? Uh,
They're obsessed with fingers in that game, bro. They're obsessed with fingers. Everything's a bloody finger in that game.
yeah,
Everything's a finger.
yeah, it's really weird, and it does have that sense of weirdness to it, and I I kind of just I felt like it was a bit amateurish in certain areas as well, in terms of uh, enemy designs and stuff like that. I didn't feel like it was a traditional Souls game. And I have to mention that if you're going to make an open world game, there's certain things that I believe you have to incorporate, and if you don't incorporate it, then you're literally alienating a lot of your user base.
What was that then? What did you think they didn't put in?
Well, okay, so things like a journal or like a quest list. So like,
Yeah,
you
yeah,
know, things
yeah,
that you come across. I need to know what I'm. I have a terrible memory, bro.
yeah. No, no, no. You're right. No, I thought the same thing. There was no kind of quest trackers, was there?
No, and for me, who did a lot of stuff, and then I sort of put the game down and I come back to it the next day. I can't remember half of it.
Yeah. No, that's fair enough. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
They should add certainly tracking quests. Yeah. One thing they did do apparently is, and apparently this was a big deal because I remember some more hardcore kind of Souls players kind of not liking it. Is that they did kind of make it easier to find. It would show you where the NPCs in the world were, and that was their kind of way of like an olive branch, kind of like to, okay, so we're not going to give you a journal, but we're going to show you where the NPCs are, so you have to go and talk to them. That's
yeah.
kind of what they did, but apparently that wasn't something that was like I say, the more hardcore players were not. Oh, well, you're making it too casual, and that's always the thing is that they made it too. A lot of I think hardcore Souls players think that game, that Elden Ring, was made too casual. It was made too easy, too casual.
Oh, well, yeah. Well, get over it is basically my response to that. I mean, the enemies were hard enough. I've heard they nerfed some of the bosses in subsequent patches and stuff, but they don't.
They nerfed a bunch of things, dude. There was some katana, I forget the name of it, some kind of blood katana move that was so powerful that
Yeah.
people were creating these blood builds, and they were so powerful they were one-shotting bosses. So that got nerfed. So there was nerfs across the board. It's we've I've said to you before that I think one of the hardest things in games is game balance.
Yeah.
It's so difficult to do because you're never going to be able to make everyone happy, really. So it's like, so they nerf the bosses, and then somebody comes up with a powerful build. They put it on the internet. Everyone starts using that build, and then the game becomes too easy. Then they've got to nerf. They've got to nerf the build somehow, which normally is they nerf the weapon. Then they upset other people, and it's a bit of a nightmare because you're never going to be able to please everybody.
I don't believe in nerfing. If someone's come up with a decent build, then that's fine. That's how I see it.
Then they've got to increase the difficulty of the bosses, and then that makes other people unhappy
Well,
because they're trying to find a balance.
then have difficulty modes. I mean, this is the thing. There's only one difficulty level, and you
Mm.
either take you like it or you lump it. And
Mm.
this is the thing. This is what makes the Souls game so famous, I guess, is that they are brutal. But if someone comes up with a powerful build, let them have that powerful build for fuck's sake. It's like Miyazaki is so uh, he's so hell bent on making things difficult for you and only giving you a tiny smidgen of hope, which is again is fine. But if someone's coming up with a way of making things slightly easier, that should just be left.
Yeah, but the problem you've got with that is that I kind of agree with you, but the fan base, because as you said before earlier about taking pride in beating a difficult game, which some of them do,
Mm,
that if somebody's got like this super build, they will almost request nerfs to a certain degree because it's like, well, we don't want a player who's just got this super build who hasn't quote unquote earned the right to be so good. That's why they're so like you've seen all the memes. Get good, get good. This is Dark Side. Get good. All these kind of memes,
yeah.
and there's a certain hardcore of the fan base which are very much like, no, I, I'm going to win because I'm really good at the game because I can do all the dodges and I've got all the timing down pipe. Right. What I don't want is some player who's got little skill just hitting a button again and again because he's got a super move because he's got this super build that he didn't even create. That's the way they look at it. I'm not saying I do. I'm in the middle. I'm I'm on the fence in the middle. I see both sides a little bit,
Yeah.
but that's how I know. I've seen it. I've seen the posts. I've seen the comments. That's what some people think. They don't want it to be. They don't want it to be easy. They want it to be hard. They don't want things to be too powerful.
Well, then that's down to the individual. If someone's
Yeah.
made a YouTube video about how to be overpowered, then that's down to that user of whether he decides to go that way or not.
Hmm.
It's like, well, if you've decided to do that, then you feel like you've cheated yourself, and if you're fine with that, you're then fine. I still think that there should be that option, and they need to. they need to play test their game a lot more before they bring it out if they're so worried. You know.
Well, it's just a constant. Like I say, it's a constant shift of nerfs. Nerf the bosses because people think they're too hard. Then nerf the builds because people think the builds are too powerful and the bosses aren't hard enough. And because they've only got the one difficulty, like you said, it's virtually an impossible task, really.
Yeah.
Like there's no way really around it. No one's going to be happy. You're going to upset somebody. So yeah, the answer is really okay. Have the difficulty sliders then. Do something like that. So
Yeah.
then the hardcore players can put it up to the maximum, and then the newer players can have it on easy or just have it on normal. So
Yeah, I mean, he seems to be quite happy to alienate a lot of the user base with the difficulty setting and stuff. It's his game; he can do what he wants with it.
mhm.
But when you come to a open world game, you have to include things like a quest tracker and maybe a journal. And I mean, like he didn't sort of put markers of where every NPC was. There were some people that you had to go and find on your own, and I mean, the end game was really nice. It felt good, and yeah, I mean, like there's a lot of aspects to the game that I really liked, but I was just got more and more pissed off with the fact that I missed out on a whole bunch of things because I wasn't reminded of them.
Yeah, it is a little bit of what's known as a wiki game, where in order to kind of find out any information about things, it's kind of like you have to go on the internet and have a look at wiki. And there's other games like it, but it is a little bit of a wiki game because, as you rightfully said, that you can just literally just miss something, and then it's gone forever, and then you've got to replay the game. However, some people I've will play the Dark Souls games again and again. They'll new game plus it to death, and those kind of people, I guess they don't mind because eventually they'll see everything. But if you're only going to play it through once or twice, or just once, then you want to see everything in that time. But in order to do that, you're going to have to go on Wiki. You do. You
Yeah,
have to go on Wiki.
yeah. I
There's
mean,
no
like
way. There's no way else to do it.
I mean, like there are users that will challenge themselves after subsequent playthroughs where it's just like dagger only or
Yep.
shield only or
Yep.
spells only.
Yep.
Um, Again, which is fine, but like I've always believed that when it comes to games, um, there has to be more options. Like give people a choice, and if the whole idea of the game is that it's supposed to be really brutally difficult, then keep it brutally difficult and don't fucking change things, don't nerf things. Oh, the bosses are too hard, tough shit. Then you have to do it. You have to find a way of doing it. You have to find a way of defeating them. No nerfing. I went through the whole game, and I think I only had one subsequent patch installed. I think I did it, that I wouldn't say quickly, but I'd yeah,
Yeah. So a lot of the nerfs, I think, probably came after you stopped playing. Like the thing I was telling you about when it comes to the NPC stuff.
yeah,
I think that didn't come in right away. That was a couple of months after which they finally put that in.
yeah,
I
yeah,
think I was still playing it at the time. I think it came in halfway through I was playing, but it's a difficult one. I kind of agree with you, but I mean, it's one of those you can't have your cake and eat it too. He obviously it was such a big kind of more. This game was so much more casually released, and it is a more casual game. For example, the magic stuff in Elden Ring is much more powerful and potent than it was in other games. So much so, it's another thing the hardcore players have complained about that
mm,
magic's too powerful because
yeah,
in the other games, magic was much more of a side thing you could do, right?
yeah,
Whereas in Elden Ring, you can play a magic character, which is all based around magic. And because it's ranged, right, it makes some fights way too easy
yeah,
because it's ranged. And also, you know the summons you can do, so you can summon like a pack of wolves. People hate that as well. A lot of hardcore players hate that stuff because they say it takes the aggro away, makes the game too easy.
yeah. No, I didn't agree with the summons mechanic. I never used any of that at all. I
I used some of it, but not all of it. I used some of it at the start. I used it, but I stopped using it as
Yeah.
time went on.
Uh, I mean, so overall, it's the the reasons why I don't like it made it sort of like to the point where I would never go back to it. I'm never sort of going to go back and play it again. But with other people, then they do like it. They love it. I mean, like you liked it more than
Yeah,
I did.
yeah.
So I mean,
I tried to do everything I could. So even though I too missed out on some quests, I can also admit that when I got a little stumped, I looked on Wiki. So, for example, I can't remember the name. There's a quest that you find quite early on with some kind of princess, and she's like trying to get into a castle or something. And
yeah,
I just, for the life of me, I was just like, so I was like, is this a side quest? So what am I meant to do? And for the life of me, I didn't understand really what I was meant to do. So I went on Wiki, and it's like, no, you have to wait until you have to wait till a next point in the story of where you are in the main story, and then and only then can you come back. But you would have no way of ever knowing that if I wouldn't have looked on Wiki to know that.
certain, yeah.
Yeah. So I did that a couple of times, but even so, there was still stuff I missed.
Oh,
Um,
yeah, it's a waste of time because they both die anyway. So
yeah. Well, yeah. Yeah.
it's just like you go back to the bird, it's like,
Yeah.
right, okay, I've got it,
Yeah.
mate.
And she's dead. Yeah, she's dead.
Yeah, it's like, oh,
Yeah.
what the fuck?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Um,
Um,
yeah. So I mean, that's kind of mostly it. I mean, it's a nice try, but what would make it a lot better, and for me have a lot of replay value, is if they had a quest tracker. I think that's pretty much my only major gripe. I mean, there's lots of other little sort of issues, but that's really the only one. You know,
I don't think they ever will because he wants it. The Japanese fella, he wants it to be. He wants you to find it yourself. He wants you to explore it yourself. That's what he wants. He wants you to find it yourself. He doesn't the whole handheld thing, right? He doesn't want virtually any. He doesn't want any hand holding, but he also was kind of marketing Elden Ring towards a more casual audience. And it's one of those things where if you're going to try and market to more casual players, these players are going to be more confused.
well, I'm not necessarily asking for the quest targets. What I'm saying is, I want to be able to start up the game the following day, and then read through what I need to do. Right. So things that I've come across, things that people have asked me to do, I want that listed somewhere. You know,
Mm.
that's all I want. I don't want to be pointed in the direction. I want to. Oh, okay. I need to sort this out for that bird. Now, what area was that? That's all. That's all I want. I just want to be reminded, and not like because my memory is shot to shit. So
No,
yeah,
that's fair enough.
I kind of think like he's a bit of a sadistic game designer, to be quite honest with you.
Well, there's things that he comes out on Twitter sometimes, doesn't he? And he kind of like says, oh, he's got a new idea or he's got a certain level, and that he always does these kind of sludge levels that everybody hates, which they're levels which decrease your movement speed,
Oh, the
and
swamp levels, yeah.
he always puts them apparently in every single game. There's one level. I think in Elden Ring it's the I think it's like there's like for lava. Yeah, it's lava, and there's some levels where there's lava everywhere, and you move at a snail's pace whilst you're slowly losing energy
Oh
and
yeah.
stuff like that.
Oh,
And
oh, it's great.
apparently he does this in every game. He puts these in there, and they're hated by everybody.
Yeah.
But he does it anyway because he knows people hate them. So it's like okay,
See, that's fine. I much prefer Dark Souls 3 because it was a lot contained. I think it works better in a linear environment, his
mm,
design, and not so much as in an open world setting. Because if you've got the dungeons all linear, then just make everything else linear, for God's sake. But anyway, that's going to wrap it up for today's show.
yep,
Yeah, so tell us what you thought of Elden Ring. Did you love it? Put it in the comments below. Again, subscribe to our lovely new channel. Click the bell, give us a thumbs up, do all those wonderful YouTubey things. And
Pete, mate, you got to get good. You got to get good.
I got to get God.
You got to get good. You got to get good.
Uh,
Okay,
I,
thanks, people.
yeah, no, I dare you to play Dark Souls 3. To be quite honest.
I might actually have it. I think I might have actually downloaded it from Xbox Live. Maybe I will.
Yes, give it a
Just
go. All right, everyone. We'll see you next time.
take care.